How's it going, fellas? My name is Andy, and today we're gonna take a look at 8 NBA players who passed away in the middle of their primes. I know there's unfortunately been a lot of deaths throughout NBA history, but for this video, we're only gonna narrow it down to players who died, let's say, from the ages of 25 to 30. So I'm gonna leave out guys like Len Bias and Hank Gathers, who, I'm sure you know their stories already anyway, but they passed away at a really young age. The other criteria is that they must have been playing for an NBA team at the time as well. Alright, without further ado, let's get started. Number 8, Jason Collier. Jason was the 15th overall pick in the 2000 NBA draft by the Bucks, but then he was traded to the Rockets on draft day. He was a 7-foot center who, throughout his NBA career, played primarily as a backup for the Rockets and the Hawks. Unfortunately, right before he was about to begin his 6th NBA season, he was found dead in his home. It was a complete shock, since the doctors never found anything wrong with him in the preseason medical checkup. Initially, the cause of death was uncertain, but what happened was, during a Saturday morning, Collier all of a sudden collapsed. He had trouble breathing and his face turned blue, according to his wife. And then he ended up passing away in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Later on, the cause of death was found to be complications caused by an enlarged heart. Collier was 28 years old and averaged about 6 points and 3 rebounds for his career. Number 7, Terry Furlow. A legendary college player at Michigan State during the 1970s. He was one of the best players in the school's history. He was drafted in 1976 to the Philadelphia 76ers, but he was quickly traded a couple of times and never got consistent minutes. In the 4 seasons Furlow played in the NBA, he was on 4 different teams. In the 1979-80 season, at just 25 years old, it looked like his career had turned around. He was having a great season after getting traded to the Jazz, averaging about 16 points and 4 assists per game. But then, shortly after the season ended, Furlow was killed when he was driving on a highway and crashed into a pole. So what seemed like a promising turnaround to his career just ended way too soon. Number 6, Eddie Griffin. One of the more brutal deaths. So, Griffin was drafted in 2001 by the New Jersey Nets, but he was immediately traded to the Rockets for Jason Collins, Brandon Armstrong, and Richard Jefferson. And this turned out to be a good trade for the Nets. Griffin was amazing in high school and college, but he didn't live up to expectations in the NBA. He averaged like 9 points, 6 rebounds a game in his first 2 years in Houston, and during his time there, he also had some problems off the court with alcohol and drug abuse. During the 2007 offseason, Griffin was driving his car and did not realize where he was. He ended up crashing into a moving train and instantly died on the spot. The crash caused a huge fire, and his body was in such a bad state that the only way he was identified was through his dental records. Dwayne Casey, who coached him in Minnesota, said that everybody tried to help him from the top to the bottom of the organization. He just couldn't get it straight. It's a tragic ending for a beautiful kid. He had a beautiful heart. Number 5, Reggie Lewis. Now, I'm sure most of you have already heard of the story of Reggie Lewis. He was drafted by the Boston Celtics in 1987, and he made major improvements in his game as his career progressed. By 1992, he was an all-star and averaged over 20 points a game, so it looked like he was gonna have a great career ahead of him. However, he would never get the chance. Lewis suffered a cardiac arrest and passed away during the middle of a practice in the 1993 offseason. He showed prior symptoms of heart problems before this incident, like when he collapsed during a playoff game earlier that year. But even so, this was still awful. He was 27 years old, and originally it was thought that Lewis's heart issues were caused by cocaine use. But his family claimed that it wasn't the case, and the reports of the cause of his cardiac arrest are still inconsistent. After his death, the Celtics honored Lewis by retiring his number 35 jersey. Number 4, Bobby Phills. Phills was the 45th overall pick in the 1991 draft, and usually players who are picked that low never even play an NBA game. But he had an incredible work ethic, and he earned himself a long NBA career because of his great defense. In the 1995-96 season, he was named to the All-Defensive Second Team, and Michael Jordan even said that Bobby Phills was the toughest defender he had ever faced. Well, Jordan probably said that to a lot of people, but it's still a great compliment. Throughout his career, Phills developed his jumper, and he was the prototype for the modern 3-and-D role player. Strong and physical on defense, but he also had a great 3-point shot on offense. Unfortunately, on January 12, 2000, Phills was driving his car, but it went out of control and he collided with a minivan. He was killed instantly, and it was only a few weeks after his 30th birthday too. He finished his career with averages of 11 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists per game, shooting 39% from 3. Number 3, Malik Sealy. Unfortunately, a couple of months after the death of Bobby Phills, another car accident happened. On May 20th, 2000, Malik Sealy got hit by a drunk driver who was driving a truck, going the wrong direction on a highway. It was a head-on collision, and Sealy ended up getting killed on the spot. At the time, he was playing for the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he was actually one of Kevin Garnett's best friends. In fact, he got killed in that car accident a few hours after he was done celebrating KG's 24th birthday, which is just awful to think about, especially since they were really close. So in honor of Sealy, the Wolves retired his number 2 jersey. Garnett also had his name tattooed on his arm and also wrote his name on the shoes he wore in the games. Sealy was the guy who brought him out of his shell, and he instilled confidence and a ferociousness in him during his rise to superstardom. If it wasn't for Sealy, we probably would have never seen the KG that we all know today. Number 2, Conrad McRae. McRae is one of the lesser known players on this list, and in fact he never actually played in an NBA game. But at the time of his death, he was playing for the Orlando Magic Summer League team. He was 29 years old at the time and spent his previous years playing overseas for a couple of different European teams. McRae was still chasing his dreams of making it to the NBA though, and in the summer of 2000, he finally got his chance. But during the middle of a practice with the Orlando Magic, he collapsed and died. So it was just not a happy ending. He had a couple of blackouts in the middle of games before, so doctors actually advised him to quit basketball, but McRae still had hopes of playing in the NBA. And when he finally had a good chance of making a roster, it suddenly ended. Number 1, Drazen Petrovic. Definitely the most iconic player on this list. Even before coming to the NBA, Petrovic was one of the greatest European basketball players ever. He won multiple EuroLeague titles and battled against the USA Dream Team in the '92 Olympics. In the NBA, he averaged over 20 points a game with the Nets, but it turns out that it would be his last season. Petrovic was traveling in Germany and didn't have a seatbelt on and ended up getting killed in a car accident. I actually made a previous video that covered Petrovic's life and basketball career in more detail, so I'll put an annotation if anyone's interested in that video. You can check it out too. But yeah, as you probably figured, his death shocked the entire world. At the time, he was a very high-profile athlete, and he was pretty much well known by everyone in the basketball community. Guys like Reggie Miller, Michael Jordan, and other shooting guards have said that Petrovic is one of the hardest players they've ever guarded. He was only 28 years old at the time of his death. That's all, folks. I know there's been some other players who passed away recently, but in this video, I only wanted to cover the players who died in the middle of their primes while playing for an NBA team. But of course, it's all pretty bad. Nobody wants to see anyone die. I hope this video was not too dark for anyone watching. Anyway, that's basically it. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I put all of the sources in the description so you can read more about these deaths if you want. I'll see you next time, guys. Peace.